Yes, we are out here and we are live. We are live, folks. What's going on? Welcome on into, another episode of Fantasy Intervention. Yeah, we got some packed stuff for you guys for tonight's game. Packed full of information, packed full of research. I spent a ton of time this morning putting everything together for you guys. And I have a few kind of hot takes, I guess. You could call them hot takes when it comes to actually, this DFS matchup moving forward. And unfortunately, I don't have the time to sit there and go through, every single, last player and both of these matchups as well. So I did pick out the one matchup that I really wanted to cover, and that was the Dallas Cowboys up against the Arizona Cardinals. So that's what we're going to go through today is the Cowboys versus the Cardinals. Now, this past weekend was excellent. We hit on the majority of our takes. I was absolutely stoked with the results from this past weekend on the DFS matchup. So yeah, I'm just hoping that I can even get, even 90% of what we hit this past weekend. And this game is going to be extremely, extremely complicated to figure out exactly where we're going to go. A lot of people are sitting there hoping for the Amari Cooper, week. And of course, CeeDee Lamb is so hot right now, right? CeeDee Lamb is actually more expensive than Amari Cooper is. And then, of course, we don't know what's going to happen with Andy Dalton coming in, although I still do expect, him to pretty much have about 95% of the output that we saw from Dak Prescott. I think he's still a good quarterback. I think that he had a really, really bad offensive line over there for the Bengals in Cincinnati. And, it's tough to produce for a guy that's not mobile and behind a bad offensive line. Not to mention, of course, this past year, AJ Green was out in 2019. And yeah, it was a tough situation for him. Also, you got to keep in mind that, prior to, of course, the new coach coming in with Zach Taylor, I mean, you had a guy who just didn't want to open up that offense with Marvin Lewis over there. So once again, I'm expecting Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, to resume back to where he was back like 5 years ago when he was slinging it all around, when AJ Green was a young buck, making those crazy catches. And in this offense, it should be an easy start to click on Andy Dalton. But the guy that I'm actually going to be taking a look at, right? Because I've been pounding the table for slot wide receivers this entire weekend. I thought that I was going to dive into this and think that CeeDee Lamb was going to be the guy that I wanted to go to in this matchup. But it turns out it wasn't that way. It actually is not that way this week. Who I'm actually looking at is Michael Gallup, believe it or not. Yeah, Michael Gallup. I swear to God, I'm actually going to be playing Michael Gallup this week. When I look into snap counts, play percentages, most people assume, right, on the defensive side of things that Byron Murphy, who's been really, really good, plays outside because he is leading the team in snaps outside of Patrick Peterson. But the reality is when Kirkpatrick comes in, Byron Murphy actually slides into the slot. And those wide receivers, right, who have produced big up against the Cardinals, they look like slot guys, but the reality is they're actually alphas who can move to the slot. And they've been staying away from Byron Murphy in this matchup. Byron Murphy's been that good to where teams are not having these slot alphas like Terry McLaurin slide into the slot and get that work, in that situation. When I sat there and I went to Next Gen Stats and I actually looked at the routes run, they might have started in the slot or whatever the case is, but they're actually moving and getting outside of where the slot corners normally line up. So it's something where I believe there's a lot of zone coverage actually being played over there in Arizona. But even so, Murphy's been very, very, very good. So I'm expecting Patrick Peterson to kind of shadow Cooper and Byron Murphy to stay in the slot up against CeeDee Lamb. So I'm going to lean Gallup this week. I think the Gallup is in a smash play. Once again, it's kind of a tough one because when we look back, Dalton targeted Gallup, Lamb, and Cooper all 3 times this past week, and then he hit up Pollard twice. So it's not like we know who the guy is going to be. But Gallup should be matched up across Kirkpatrick, who does not have that athletic profile to keep up with Gallup, right? Gallup is a big play type guy. He can get down the field and he can burn Kirkpatrick. He really could. Arizona has allowed 16 explosive plays in the passing game, which is middle of the road when you take a look at it. Like when you're looking at it, 16 explosive passing plays, that's right there in the middle, like 16th or something along those lines. But then when you go back, right, and you look at the wide receivers, the quarterbacks that they have faced so far this season, you're looking at Dwayne Haskins, right? You're looking at Jimmy G. You're looking at Matt Stafford, right? Okay, yeah. I mean, Matt Stafford's a good quarterback. And, Kenny Golladay was back, but it was his first game back, right? Then you have Teddy Bridgewater and Joe Flacco. They're allowing the 16th most explosive plays up against nobodies, up against guys who don't throw the ball downfield, right? So this could be blowing up. That's not good, guys. That's not good, folks, right? Arizona's opponent's record that they faced so far this season is 7-17. So honestly, I don't think that Arizona is as good as what their record and what they perceive to be. I think that they're actually a little bit worse than average. So I think this game could break open big time, and we could see a high scoring game this week. I mean, every single metric that I went through, they were like averaging. Like I could not find anything that they weren't in the middle of the road in. And then I realized how bad their schedule was. And I'm like, holy shit, like they're not nearly as good as what they seem to be. They're not average. They're a bad football team overall, especially on that defensive side. The issue with this matchup is the high-priced players. The majority of these guys all across the lineup are extremely highly priced. So it's going to be tough to see like, a different lineups with both quarterbacks in there when we talk about Andy Dalton and Kyler Murray. Because if you want a quarterback, you want one of his wide receivers. And I think Amari Cooper's at like $8K while CeeDee Lamb's at 84. And then you have Hopkins, who is way priced up there. I think he's actually more expensive than Andy Dalton. The running backs are high priced. So you kind of got to pick your poison and decide which route you want to go. And I'm taking the Gallup route because he is actually only 5,600 this week, right? 5,600. That's a great pivot to go to with Gallup. So if I want Andy Dalton and I want Kyler Murray in my lineups together, maybe sneak in Hopkins, try to sneak in Elliott in some sort of fashion. I think that Gallup is going to have to be one of those guys that you're going to have to play. And I love his upside. I absolutely love it, right? Like I talked about, Kirkpatrick runs a 4.57 40. And even though he's actually hasn't been good in the passing game so far this year, he also hasn't had any great competition, right? I think that Gallup is a great player, and we saw it last year when he was equivalent to Amari Cooper stats. The only problem was Dak Prescott didn't know how to look left so far this season. For some reason, he was sitting there neglecting Michael Gallup on the outside, but every single time that Gallup was called upon, he produced, and he produced at a high level. He made great catches. I mean, he's the cheapest Dallas receiver by almost $3K. And that's something where I want to own him. And I don't think that he's going to have high ownership. Even at his price, I don't think he's going to have as high ownership as CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper because these guys are so hot right now. So hot right now. Damn, I'm making like two Zoolander references between the, you can't look left and the so hot right now for Hansel. Anyways, guys, I think it's an absolute smash play. He's probably going to be my most owned player in this game overall. Now, of course, you got to play Dalton at 9,600. He's up against the 19th worst passing defense, whose best quarterback they faced so far is either Bridgewater or Stafford, whichever guy you want to say. I don't need to do a deep dive into this one. However, I can see if you wanted to pivot from, of course, Andy Dalton over to Ezekiel Elliott, it does make sense to me. If you think that Arizona is going to be on the pass-heavy side and the Cowboys could go up, it does make sense to not play Andy Dalton, but I do want to play him in a lot of lineups. The thing that you can do this week, which I don't normally recommend, is actually play Andy Dalton with Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, Dalton checks down a lot. In 2019, through 13 games, he checked it down almost 60 times to the running back. In 2018, we saw 103 checkdowns to the running back. 2017, we saw 96 checkdowns to the running back. He checks down a lot. Like, this is something that he does. And it's something that Zeke's great at, and it's something that the Cowboys want to do. If you take out last week, which is weird that they didn't use Elliott more in the pass game last week, but if you take out last week, he's averaging over 7 targets a game. They want to use him. They want to use him. And the Cardinals over there are allowing the 7th most receiving yards to the running back position, the 2nd most touchdowns to the position, and they are the 8th least amount of receptions. So obviously that yards per reception is through the roof. They're getting burned by running backs, right? On top of that, they're 10th in yards allowed on the ground to the running back. So don't get cute. You got to play Elliott in a lot of your lineups. There's a reason why he's so expensive, and that price tag is not scaring me away. I think he's a major part of the offense this week. Now, I don't hate Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb, but at their price, it makes it very difficult to play them if you want to get in some of these other big-time names. the majority of the time that you're going to be able to play them as flyers is going to be like you're not going to be able to play Zeke in the same lineups. You're not going to be able to play Edmonds in a lot of the same lineups, Drake, Hopkins. Like these guys are going to have to be played pretty much all separately unless you end up just bombing that last spot, just selling on like a Andy Isabella type play, which does make sense. But I'm just not in love with their matchups up against Murphy and Peterson. Murphy has allowed 10 receptions on 31 targets so far this season, and Peterson has only allowed 9 receptions on 21 targets while in coverage so far this season. If you're playing Cooper Lamb, then your fingers are crossed that they're going to play the majority of the game in zone, so they don't end up getting burned, and then they're not going to go into man coverage. But I still I don't love this matchup this week. So although I will have them sprinkled in, I'm not going to have them in like every single lineup. I'm not going to have them in nearly as many lineups as I will Gallup. Now with Banjo returning, right, Schultz gets a little bit less sexy, but I actually still kind of like Schultz this week. Everyone is like, oh, they're so much better up against the tight end this year. They're so much better. But that's not actually true at all. They appear to be better, but they've only faced one good one, right? Kittle got hurt. And then outside of Hawkinson, none of those guys were really any good, right? Hawkinson tore him up, though. The other guys that they faced are pretty much like bottom 10 tight ends or starting tight ends, that is, at the position. But Hawkinson, yeah, man. He put up 7 receptions for 81 yards and a touchdown on him. So Schultz will be in a few of my lineups. But it's kind of crazy to me how he's still more expensive than Michael Gallup. He's still sitting at $6K, and somehow Gallup, who is 2 weeks removed from like a 138-yard game or something like that, is underneath Schultz. So I might do some matchups where I have like Zeke, Dalton, or maybe like Zeke, Dalton, Cooper as well, and Schultz, if I didn't say that. And then try and front load it with like maybe Hopkins and another player, or of course Kyler Murray and another player. But yeah, you're going to have to figure out that math and try to squeeze those guys in if you're going to play that many high-end players. And I don't know if you can actually get there, but yeah. One more guy on the Cowboys side of things that I might have one lineup with him in there is Cedric Wilson. We all know that he has that big game potential, but honestly, he's just getting used as a short yardage type wide receiver. If he breaks one open, great. You get your money back for him, but I'm not going to have him in a lot of lineups, maybe just one. Just say fuck it and play one of them. But yeah, guys, I'm going to go over the other side of things, right, with Arizona, but I do want to say go check out my Patreon account. Right? Go make sure you guys go to patreon.com/fantasyintervention. Check out my Patreon account. You guys get three of my lineups. 3 of my lineups where you guys can do whatever you want with them. You can play them, or you can just kind of alter them in. But yeah, go check out 3 of my lineups, guys, on patreon.com/fantasyintervention, and make sure you go join our circle. Join our circle, along with checking out our linktr.ee/fantasyintervention. And go check us out on YouTube, guys. We have a bunch of quick hits coming up. We have a bunch of quick hits scheduled, and I could not be more excited to get this off the ground. Or quick shots, I should say. Dave killed the last one, along with DJ as well. I'm excited. I'm excited to roll all these out for you guys. Now, let's go ahead and cover the other side of this game with the Arizona Cardinals. On the other side, the Cowboys have been putrid on defense. They have stunk. They have sucked. It has been terrible. They are ranked 25 up against the quarterback and 31st up against the wide receiver. Teams, they've been game planning to take Hopkins out of the game for the past 5 years, and very few of those teams have actually worked out for him. And it's looking to be this very, very same way over there in Arizona that it was over in Houston. So you got to play Hopkins in a lot of your lineups. I'm not saying that he has to be in every single one. You can always have some contrarian ones as to where he's not going to be playing. But for me, I'm going to be knocking Hopkins out in a lot of my lineups. But the one guy that is going to really differentiate my lineups this week is going to be Christian Kirk. I love Christian Kirk this week, and I don't often say that. Jordan Lewis could easily be one of the worst quarterbacks in the league right now. And Kirk, he doesn't get moved around the formation. It's like 90% of his snaps are on the outside the right outside part of the field. Like, he doesn't get moved around and motioned. That's always going to be DeAndre Hopkins. That's going to be Larry Fitzgerald. That's going to be the tight ends with Dan Arnold and what's his name, Daniels. But with Kirk, he just stays out there on the right. And normally that doesn't work out for him. And that's probably why he's going to have a very low ownership. But if Murray can just look his way a couple of times, I think that he can burn Jordan Lewis. I think that he could actually have a really, really big game. With Christian Kirk's upside and his abilities, he's kind of been used in like the wrong role so far this season. But Jordan Lewis isn't near athletic enough to be able to keep up with Christian Kirk. And we all know that Christian Kirk can have those big-time games. I could see Christian Kirk having a 2-touchdown game in this one, with 100 yards. It's very, very possible up against Cowboys defense that is terrible, terrible. They've given up 17 big plays so far to the wide receiver position. With that being said, Larry Fitzgerald, with his low value on this target premium, I'm going to be staying away from Larry Fitzgerald this week and playing a lot more Christian Kirk. Now, Larry Fitzgerald, yeah, he might not make it into any of my lineups, to be honest with you, but Andy Isabella is actually an interesting play. We saw his big week back a few weeks ago, and then last week he went 2 for 3 for 30. So he's still getting work, right? All he really needs is like one big play to actually pay back his value in DFS. So you could get that. You could see that very, very easily. And with him being as cheap as he is, it makes he allows you to actually go back and play a lot of these guys, these high-end guys that you wouldn't normally be able to play without having that shot in the dark, that dart throw. So although I'm not like, oh my God, you got to play Andy Isabella, I'm still going to have him in quite a few lineups. That's pretty much going to be my go-to dart throw this week. I just want to make sure that he's active, which he should be. He's getting worked in this offense more and more often. Like I said, the Cowboys give up the 17th most, or they've given up 17 big plays so far this season. Andy Isabella is that deep threat guy. So I think that Andy Isabella could be that guy. Meanwhile, Dan Arnold, he's been like worked out of the offense as a receiver. That Daniels has been moving into more and more snaps, and Daniels isn't a pass catcher. Daniels is there to give Kyler Murray more time to throw. So I got to say I'm not going to go with Dan Arnold this week. And I don't even know what happened. So I have one of my reports that says that he has 27 snaps last week, and then another one of my reports that says that he didn't play at all. So I didn't have time to go back and look into it, but if he did see 27 snaps and didn't produce at all, I don't like that. I don't like Dan Arnold. I don't like him moving forward. I mean, they've given him opportunity after opportunity, and I think that they're leaning towards, if Daniels isn't in there to block, they're going to leave Christian Kirk in there to get those big-time play ability snaps. So I like Andy Isabella. I don't like either one of these tight ends. I'm going to be staying away from both of them this upcoming week. Meanwhile, Dallas, they haven't been great up against the tight end position, but they've been solid overall. I just don't know if there's enough upside value with either one of these tight ends in this matchup. I'm going to be staying away from them. Now, at the running back position for the Cardinals, this one's tricky. Drake is getting the majority of the snaps, and that's not even questionable. He has been the entire season. And Edmonds, he's been doing really, really well with his efficiency, but he's not getting up there with his snap count, right? I love the fact that Edmonds is over there as a wide receiver. He's gotten 40 snaps as a wide receiver so far this season, which has added like an additional 2.7 or so points per game in fantasy. So that's nice. That's a nice little bonus you get in there, but that's not enough to really make me want to go out, run out and play Edmonds in every single lineup. He's expensive this week. He's very expensive this week. I mean, not outrageous, but he's expensive to the tune that you can't play some of these other big time names if you end up playing Edmonds. So he's actually, I believe, more expensive than Kenyan Drake, which is a little bit weird for me, just because Kenyan Drake is still getting all the snaps. I know that the Cowboys right now, they're actually really good up against the running back when it comes to the passing game. So that could have a piece to do with the fact that the secondary is awful, but I'm looking at it and their yards per reception are actually only at 5.56. So yeah, they're only allowing 5 yards per reception, and they haven't allowed a single pass catching touchdown to the running back as well. So yeah, if Edmonds does it this week, it'll have to be on the ground or as a wide receiver. And I just don't know that Kingsbury actually wants to give him the volume. I mean, he's only played one full season in 4 years dating back to college. And in that season, he only touched the ball 80 times in that entire season. So yeah, I just don't think that Kingsbury wants to take that risk. He wants to leave him in there as the efficiency type guy, be that change of pace back. And unfortunately for all of you that are looking, for that breakout week by Edmonds, I don't think it's going to happen this week. It could happen next week, maybe it comes to starting running back, but I don't see it happening this week. I think that Kenyan Drake is going to take that volume. And with him being that between the tackles runner as of right now, and being the guy that's getting the majority of the snaps, that's how you beat the Cowboys, or that's how you beat the Cowboys in the running game or with the running back. Plus the fact that he's cheaper. I'm leaning Drake on this matchup for like the first time ever. And I don't even like Kenyan Drake. I'm not a Kenyan Drake fan at all. I think Benjamin is the best option in that backfield. But yeah, I'm leaning Drake in this one because of the price combined with the ownership, because people are going to be off him. Meanwhile, Edmonds is going to be a hot potato over there for the ownership on DraftKings. I'm going with Kenyan Drake. But honestly, I don't think I'm playing a lot of the running back in either one of these. I think that this is going to be a pass-heavy game. I think it's going to be an explosive game. And I'd much rather, take my shots on the receivers in this game. So yeah, that's going to be it, guys. Listen, I appreciate you guys for coming in. Make sure you guys check us out on Linktree, linktr.ee/fantasy intervention. Once again, that's linktr.ee/fantasy intervention to check out all of our content. Thank you guys once again for listening, and thank you for letting me intervene with your fantasy football life. I'm out.